Welcome back, pod people. Today, my guest is Kevin Kopacka, the co-writer and director of Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes, a German language sort of really difficult to categorize, kind of mystery, almost a thriller, horror-ish film that is going to be really difficult to discuss without getting into spoilers. And so we are going to get into spoilers really promptly. So my recommendation, if you don't want spoilers, is this movie is definitely worth checking out. See if you can find some promotional material for it and look for as it to be available in your region. And if you are interested in spoilers or simply don't mind them, then keep listening. So, Kevin, this movie, like I said, is really difficult to categorize. It really starts off looking like one kind of movie, and then by the end, it is a completely different kind of movie. The opening reminds me of the old Universal and Hammer, like Frankenstein and Dracula films, and Legend of Hell House, where people go to this potentially haunted, potentially someone creepy living in it castle. Also reminds me of Castle Freak a bit. And then about a third of the way into the movie, things dramatically change, and we learn that we've been watching a movie that the characters are filming, and we sort of pull back from that and we stop watching the film within the film and start watching the production of the film, and then things just get weirder from there. So tell me a bit about how you came up with this structure for the film and what motivated that, rather than making simply the movie that we start out watching.
Sure. I would say that this midpoint twist wasn't initially the plan. It just kind of evolved from the story I was working on, or I was trying to tell. And I co-wrote the script with my now fiance, Lily Villani. And I think, yeah, our relationship, like we're a couple and we work together on films, definitely shaped also the evolution of the story and how it kind of progressed. And I kind of like the idea in general, and with all my films, to work with different layers of reality that coexist and that kind of co-influence each other. And I think that was kind of one reason why it led to this reveal, because I kind of like the idea of being stuck in a cycle and not being able to escape. And when I was younger, I used to watch the movies I used to watch, like this one, I forget the English title. It's like a cartoon with the mouse, Fievel the Mouse Wanderer. And at the beginning of the film, he always gets split up from his family. And every time I watched it as a kid, I was hoping that this time it would be different, that this time they won't be making these mistakes, and it would change. But of course, it never changes, because the characters in the film are kind of doomed to repeat their mistakes over and over. And I kind of like that idea, to incorporate it into it's into the conflict that the second couple of the film have, and that they kind of repeat their own mistakes in forgiving the partner in this sense, and therefore also kind of doomed to repeat their mistakes over and over.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Sort of cycles of that. That's really interesting that you talk about the forgiveness as part of the cycle of mistakes. Normally, I see forgiveness presented as like the way to break out of that kind of cycle. And the movie that you were mentioning, I believe you're talking about An American Tale.
Oh yeah, that's the title, yeah. The English title.
Yes, that is also one of the movies that I was really into growing up. So
oh, yeah.
That's cool. Definitely a really good one worth checking out, by Don Bluth, one of my favorite animators. Okay, so yeah, that's interesting, talking about the cycles of causing these sort of problems for each other as a couple. One of the things that I really felt was one of the strongest themes of the movie was um, the men not listening to the women, that was reflected but in sort of both levels of fiction and then repeatedly within one level of fiction. So you said that you co-wrote this with your partner. Is that something that she felt the need to contribute to the story? How is that reflected in the writing process?
I think in this case with the movie, because we write together, but it started off that I wrote a first draft of the script and I was talking with her about it, and then she kind of went on board as the whole structure was already there, and we kind of went into details and changing up the structure. But these elements surprisingly came from me.
Oh.
Yeah. But also in this sense, with the idea that in this case it's the men that are kind of the more destructive elements in the relationship. Of course, it's always the same relationship that's being interpreted by the second couple in the film.
Yeah.
And I think it's I didn't want to make a film that kind of inherently says like that's women are right and men are wrong. I think it's more of an idea of making a film that's set in this time in the 70s, and I think it's quite interesting to watch movies from the 70s or any older movies now to see how much has changed. And it's of course true that there were some sexist elements in the 70s movies. But I don't really like to condemn it, because now from our point of view, it's very different. I kind of think it's quite interesting that it's just a staple of the time and that kind of exists. And I think in that case, it makes sense that in this film, it was also the men who were kind of more the destructive elements of these relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a very 70s looking film. You did a great job of reproducing that aesthetic. And so I'm curious if you could talk a bit about sort of what went into that, both in terms of artistic decisions and then on a technical level, how you carried it out. Because one of the things that I thought was most interesting visually about it is that when we're watching the first portion of the film, the movie within the movie, it really looks like that 70s film grain. The color and everything really strongly looks like, especially a European film from the 1970s. And then when it transitions into the quote unquote real world, that effect becomes less pronounced, but is still somewhat at least there. It doesn't look like a slick modern digital film, but it also doesn't look as like the film grain isn't as strong. And so I'm curious what all went into that, both in terms of decision making and in terms of how you carried out those decisions.
Mm-hmm. In terms of decision making, I think it's a bit, in general, my love for European horror films and Gothic horror films, and they were just the strongest, or at their peak, I found in the 70s and 80s. And I always found that it had a lot more of a creepy vibe to it, a creepy atmosphere through the analog visuals of it. When I compare it, for instance, to Crimson Peak, Guillermo del Toro's Gothic horror film, where I personally found that the aesthetic of it was a bit too polished for me. It was a bit too clean. I mean, of course, it's shot with a huge budget as well, but I kind of preferred the more gritty visuals to that. And one way we achieved kind of the difference between these two elements is initially we actually did plan on shooting the first part on film, on 35 millimeter or even 60 millimeter, and the second on digital. But since this is a movie I financed myself completely, we didn't have the budget, so we kind of opted for working with different lenses. So the first part works more with spherical lenses. We worked with size high speeds. And then the second part, we worked with anamorphic lenses with Covas. So in that case, of course, it has a very different, not just a different visual aspect to it, but also a different format in which to tell the story.
Okay, yeah. Now I'm wondering if okay, so the aspect ratio.
The aspect ratio, but yeah, that I forgot to mention. Of course, I still couldn't get over the idea of shooting the first part on film, so I kind of course, faked the film look it has, and also the color grading to match more of the Technicolor films at the time. So of course, I wish it would have been actually shot on film, but yeah, maybe next time.
Oh man. I've never shot anything on film, but I've read a lot written by people who did, and the process sounds incredibly arduous. The
Mm,
so it's really interesting how much the film look appeals to so many people, including me. Um, and the different degrees of effort that people will put in to replicate it using digital stuff. Because like for my most recent no budget short film, I just used very simple built-in effects in DaVinci because it's a no budget film. I don't have a ton of time. Um, and then you could spend a bunch of money on things that other people have built. You can come up with custom things yourself, and you can of course go to all of the effort to actually shoot on film. So it's really interesting the different degrees of, like, you could spend no time doing this, you could spend an entire year doing this, and
mhm.
it's really fascinating. I wonder what it is that's so appealing about that aesthetic. Is it just the
I
history
think
behind it, or
um, I think in general it's just more visually appealing. I find it's the same with how people start listening to vinyl now a lot more because it has a different audio quality and it just feels a bit more alive and but still doesn't have all these details, so it leaves up a bit more to imagination. Whereas now with
mm,
8K or whatever, you're just overwhelmed by all the information that you see, and it's a bit too much, and everything is in focus. And yeah, I don't know, I'm really drawn to the aesthetic of film.
yeah, yeah, the talking about the details that you can see versus the ones you have to imagine, that's an interesting one. A little anecdote I've said a few times on this podcast at this point is, a while ago, my local drive-in movie theater, last year, they did a showing of a triple feature of three very famous horror movies, and one of them was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I've seen many times. But they had a much higher resolution print of it than I've ever seen before. And all of a sudden, I could tell, like, oh, that's part of the building that was there when when they showed up. And that's part of the building that was put there by the set dressers. And I can tell the difference
Mm.
now. And before, on the lower resolution prints, I couldn't tell the difference. And it sort of was less effective when I could see more. Oh yeah. So this movie is clearly calling back to a variety of different films. You mentioned Crimson Peak. You mentioned how you love the films of the 70s. I am mostly familiar with very early German cinema. I don't know much about anything made after like 1940. So I'm wondering if you could tell me some specific movies that really influenced yours, that you wanted to
Mhm.
call back to with this.
Not so much German movies, actually. I mean, maybe
Oh,
a
okay.
bit of, because in German film history, there's only a few high points. I mean, in terms of horror, of course, the early ones, the 20s, and then you had some underground films in the 80s, like Necromant, Jörg Buttgereit, and the violent shit, stuff like that, more underground films.
What was the one you said
And
after Necromantic?
violent shit, or the Ittenberg movies, or stuff like that. So these gore movies
Okay.
that they had. And now you kind of occasionally have some genre films popping up, but yeah, but I think in non-horror terms, it was definitely influenced by Fassbinder, by his movies, and just the way, this I don't know, the quite poetic way that people speak in a bit over-the-top manner and this kind of absurd humor at times. But in general, I think it was more influenced by Italian or French horror directors. Jean Rollin. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Kind of these very atmospheric. He did these 70s vampire, kind of softcore erotic movies that are also kind of very sophisticated. He did The Iron Rose, which was probably the biggest inspiration for one aspect of the film, which is about a couple who are trapped in a cemetery at night, and it's very beautiful and poetic and atmospheric. And I don't know, vampires and Daughters of Darkness and Mario Bava movies, of course, The Whip in the Body. yeah, a lot of these atmospheric European horror films I quite like a lot.
Yeah, I can definitely see Daughters of Darkness in there. Um, that's the one where like the couple is traveling through Europe, and then like a sort of lesbian vampire.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Baroness,
just
yeah, in the
yeah,
hotel. Yeah,
yeah,
also
yeah, yeah,
visually it's very beautiful, and there's kind of manipulation of the. It also features a sort of dynamic relationship dynamic.
yeah, yeah. The hotel is a really beautiful location that's in that, and it does sort of mirror the castle that we see in
Mhm.
Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes. So yeah, tell us a bit about how you came to film in that location, because it's an incredible location that really adds quite a bit to the production value of the film.
I agree. I think the castle was actually the. I mean, I was finishing up the last project, and I kind of promised my crew for the next film that it will all be set in one location. And I had heard about this castle from my former flatmate, and she was kind of in touch with the couple who owned it, which were kind of a fairly young couple in their early 50s. And so I kind of came to visit, and they said we were able to shoot there for a fee, but for a kind of reduced fee because they were kind of quite interested in the project. The only problem is that they said up to one point they would kind of renovate the entire castle, and I kind of like the charm of it being slightly more rundown as it's featured in the film. So basically, there was a bit of a ticking clock in that case. They said, okay, this was in October 2017, and they said, okay, we can shoot for 3 weeks in May, and afterwards it's being renovated. So it was kind of half a year, yeah, basically for everything for this film to work, to do the casting and the entire production. So we kind of knew, okay, we have the date set and just had to work towards that.
Yeah, that can be a good thing, really, in terms of making the project actually move forward. Um,
Mhm.
was there anything that you wanted to do but either didn't have the time or the space or the resources, but you would have added if you could have?
I don't think so. I think we shot everything that was in the script. I mean, I have to say in that case that the movie you saw, the finished movie, is quite different to the script that was written. The first draft of the first edit of the film was actually twice as long as the final cut. It was 2 hours and 20 minutes, and the final cut now is like 74 minutes. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of stuff that had to get cut and a lot of things that had to be restructured in the edit, because it's more of this, fever dream style of film. And I realized that the longer it went on, at some point, I think it's good because people are so overwhelmed by it visually and the plot, in terms of the plot, that it made more sense to cut it up and make it a bit shorter as to
I
not
think that was
completely overwhelm. Mm,
I think that was a good decision. I think that a movie that's this unusual structurally could really get sort of bogged down if it was too long. And I'm a strong believer in general that um, the ideal length for a film is 90 minutes or less.
mm,
And any time that I see a movie that's more than 2 hours long, or heaven forbid more than 3 hours long, as many modern ones are, I think you it's unlikely that this film justifies its length. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, I also think it can be disrespectful to the audience if you have a really long film and it's not really worth it being that long, just out of over self-indulgence. And yeah,
yeah.
so I had to trim a lot of fat. And of course, a lot of scenes that I quite liked didn't make it into the final edit, but I think in terms of pacing and flow, it works a lot better now.
Yeah, I agree. It is mm, this kind of artistic film can definitely drag in parts, and this one doesn't. It's very any time that I start to think like, okay, I know what's going on, and we're about to be in a comfortable rhythm. It changes things up, which is
Mhm.
good. It keeps your attention the whole time through, which is really good. Did you edit it?
Yeah, I did the
Okay.
color grading and the editing.
Good. I'm glad. It shows a good level of restraint that you can both direct it and edit it and realize that it needs to be, concise rather than very long. A lot of people who do both err in the direction of including everything.
Yeah, we did a lot of test screenings, and in general, it was we shot it really quickly, but the post-production took a lot longer, mainly because because I just really wanted to take my time with it, and I did an edit, and we had test screenings. I took feedback, then I waited, let it sit for a few months, and I went back with fresh eyes, and it just kept repeating until I was finally happy with it. So
Oh,
it
how
was
long
just
did the post-production take?
probably 2 years, 2 or
Oh,
3
wow.
years. But with breaks, we formed like a production company in between, and we did a lot of commercial jobs. So basically, after work, I had to work like after 8 hours of working in our company, I sat down with the edits and worked until the night. So it took a bit longer, and because I took breaks in between just to kind of let it, kind of let it nest, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if I would be patient enough to spend all of that time on it. If I was working on a feature like that, I'd want to get it done and out there really quickly.
Yeah, that's what I kind of had to learn, because before that I was really quick and I did all these shorter projects and I shot them, I edited them in like a week or something, or not quite a week, but really quickly. And in this case, I invested so much money that I didn't want to, didn't want to fail before the finish line, just to rush it. And because that's what I'm kind of realizing now with the next feature film I'm working on, that it might take, because it has a much bigger budget and it's a lot more ambitious, and it's looking like we might not be able to shoot until 2025. So
Oh, wow.
but just to get all the money, and it's a co-production with different countries and stuff like that. So I'm kind of learning to be patient and just to enjoy it slowly unfolding, and enjoying every moment of it. Mhm.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you're patient enough to make this kind of thing work. So tell me a bit about the um, budgeting and distribution. I know that European filmmakers get a lot more support in terms of like art grants from the government than American filmmakers do. And you said that it's a co-production between several different countries. I'm guessing that means you're getting grants from several different governments. Is that right?
For the upcoming one, you mean, or for this one, for Dawn Breaks
Uh,
Behind the Eyes?
well, both I'm curious about, but I was
Mhm.
guessing, I was basing that guess on what you just said about the upcoming one.
Oh yeah, the upcoming, yeah, because Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes, it was completely self-financed. Also, mainly because we only had half a year before we were able to shoot, and also because the German funding system is a bit complicated, especially towards films like that are a bit more experimental, and yeah.
Hmm.
So, but that's like another topic to get into. And for the new one, it's now currently it's a Spanish-German co-production. It's we're planning to shoot perhaps in English though, the film. So now we're kind of calculating if we need to get another production company involved as well to get all the budget. It's currently estimated at around 3 million euros as a budget. So yeah, we'll see. But basically, we would get grants from different countries that they can apply for.
Nice. Yeah, 3 million is a pretty hefty budget in terms of the people that I normally talk with. So,
Mhm.
what was the budget for Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes like?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say because of course, a lot of work was for free and people gave. So
Yeah,
there's like a budget. What it would probably have cost if everything would have been paid, it probably would have been around, I think, 300,000. But what I ended up paying out of my pocket was 60,000 euros, which is
very
not a
nice.
lot for film, but for me as a person, it was of course quite a lot. But it was over the 4 years because, to be honest, a lot of it went to music licensing as well. A lot of the budget.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it uses a lot of already existing music, or did you hire a composer?
It's kind of a mixture, yeah, because the initial cut, I was kind of diving deep into obscure 60s, 70s, psychedelic rock, and I had a quite cool sound check. But then when we started asking for the rights, it was quite clear that it would be way too expensive. So in the end, I think it's like 5 or 6 songs that we licensed. Some others were from composers, and there's also this local Berlin psychedelic band called Liquid Brain Orchestra. So they had a lot of nice songs that they gave me that I could kind of, because the songs are quite abstract, so I could just kind of take different pieces of the songs and apply them for certain moments in the film.
Ah, so which was more expensive, hiring a composer to make original music, licensing them from this band, or licensing existing songs by people that you don't know?
The existing songs, that
I
was by
I
far the
knew
most
it.
yeah. Even though they were quite obscure. I mean, sometimes I had a song that was on one compilation in the 70s, and I thought, okay, this would be really cheap. But then this company got bought by a bigger one and a bigger, and then eventually, Sony has the rights, and I mean, they made us good deals. There was one song that I was really adamant to get, which is the one of the only 2 German songs in the scene where, in the first part, where Dieter is whipping Margot, they have this German Schlager, like 60s Schlager song, pop song playing. And this was like a really obscure song, but I really wanted to have it. And we even went so far that we got in contact with the singer, musician Gerti Möller, who is now in her 90s. And she didn't have the rights to the song, unfortunately, because she didn't compose the melody or write it. So, but she did come to a screening we had, and she kind of sat in front and watched it. And I was thinking, oh God, she's going to hate it, her song in this quite violent scene. But she quite enjoyed it, and so she
Oh,
gave us
that's
her
good.
blessing, and we kind of forwarded like pictures to the company, to the label, and I think that kind of made them go back on the price a bit.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you mentioned that you had a number of test screenings, which is that's a step that I find that a lot of independent filmmakers just sort of skip. So can you talk a bit about why you decided to do test screenings and like how you put them together, who you got to be in the audience?
To be honest, we didn't like, it's basically mostly just friends of friends. Like, not, I didn't want friends directly, like people who know me, but people who just in our circle who don't know me, who don't know anything about the project. So they would kind of, but we didn't test screen in different age groups or anything like that. So it was, I think, more matter of comprehension and how much people got and what people enjoyed. And so we kind of gave them a chart also to say that they can write down what would you call it, the pacing in their head, how the pacing worked and when it didn't work, when it went boring, and what to trim. And of course, a lot of answers were vastly different. Like, some scenes people hated and others thought it was their favorite scene. But in general, we got quite good idea of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, there's I forget any exact phrasing, but there's an idea I've heard a lot about feedback from audience members is that audience members are very good at figuring out if there is a problem, and they are okay at figuring out what the problem is, and they're very bad at figuring out how to fix the problem.
Mm, yeah. Bill Hader said something similar about Barry, that's about the scripts, that yeah, people usually know what's wrong, but their idea of how to change it is usually bad.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can see getting feedback that like, oh, the pacing in this section is not working, but then how do you fix it? That's something you're going to have to figure out.
Hmm.
So, in terms of your next film, you said that it's going to be a larger budget and a co-production between multiple companies and multiple countries. How is that going to change pre-production and production and post-production? Are you still going to be editing it, or are you going to bring in somebody else? What is going to be different for you when making a film on this larger scale?
I think to a certain extent I will have to give up some, because with the last project I was involved in pretty much every step. So I probably won't be involved as much in the production. I would still like to edit it. It's possible that we might need to get an editor in that's more experienced, just to get the funding, and that I would do it with this person. But I think editing is actually my favorite part of the whole filmmaking process, because I think that's where
Me too.
a lot of yeah, where a lot of the creative elements come in. And I think I'm only that comfortable being a director because I know that I'm going to edit it, and I'm quite happy about my editing skills. I trust in them quite a lot, so that's why yeah, I don't have problems in directing because I always think in terms of the edit. But I'm probably going to give up color grading because there's a lot more people who are a lot better at it. I might do like a pre-grade just to kind of see the direction I want to go in. Because the next film, it also, yeah, it kind of features different realities as well, and they have a different look and different visual aesthetic.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's what as an indie filmmaker, I kind of have to get used to, in a positive sense of not having to do everything myself, and being on set, not having to, carry the lights and clean the toilets and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said that you'll get somebody else to do the color grading, because the color grading was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I thought that you were particularly skilled at that. Um,
Um, I would say it's a lot of fun because I studied fine arts, so I worked as a painter for a long time. So I'm
oh,
quite interested in colors and how they interact, and so that's, yeah, I'm quite interested in that. I don't know, maybe I would I would also kind of like to do it myself. I think that's where I've only been doing color grading for 3 or 4 years, so I always feel that you need like really expensive equipment to do it. I have like an office with 3 monitors and calibrated monitors, but like the real color grading studios, they of course invest hundreds of thousands of
oh,
euros
wow.
for the hardware and the monitors and stuff like that.
I
Yeah.
I am not convinced that that is a good idea, because that using those really high-end monitors to color grade is a good idea, because no one is going to be watching it on those. I think
Yeah, that's
I,
true.
I think that a very common flaw in modern, very big budget films is that they are edited and color graded on these ultra high-end monitors that can display incredibly tiny differences between things, and especially in terms of showing very dark things, that they can display something that's 99% black and something that's 99.5% black, and they look different from each other. Whereas then when I watch it on my you know not very nice monitor, but it does the job for watching movies, uh
Mhm.
it looks the same. And so in a lot of modern films, there are dark scenes with dark things in them, and I can't tell what's going on because it all looks the same. Whereas I'm sure to
Mm.
the editor, it was all very distinct. And so that's something that I actually prefer about independent films. I mean, there's a lot of things that I prefer about independent films, but in visually, I think that because they are so often independent, color graded on the same sort of hardware that I'm watching it on, it's easier for me to see everything, and it's easier
Mhm.
for the artist's intention to line up with what I actually end up watching. And so it's really not clear to me what spending $100,000 on hardware uh, could actually improve. Um, and like in terms of software, what did you do color grading on DaVinci Resolve or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the DaVinci Studio, yeah. But
yeah,
even though the
okay,
free one in Studio is not that much of a difference anyway.
yeah,
Um,
and that's another what, like 300 euros to buy the paid
yeah.
version. That's very different from 100,000 euros.
I mean, they
So,
still use DaVinci as well. I think it's just the monitors they have and the room, especially if it's, how much light gets in and stuff like that, I think. But I kind of agree with you in the sense that I've worked on, sometimes we rented big studios to just kind of, where I did the grading in my office, and we rented a studio, and I felt like I had to change everything because it didn't look good, and I changed it according to the monitors, but then it looked like shit on every device. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I think for big budget movies that are meant to be seen on the big screen, it's probably a difference. But independent films where most people watch it on their laptops or phones, even worse, yeah, it's not going to make such a big difference.
well, I didn't watch it on a laptop or a phone. I watched it on my desktop computer, but still,
Mhm.
my monitor costs like $100 or something, so it's not a very it's 1080p, which is honestly 1080p is my preferred resolution because I
Mhm.
it the thing we were talking about earlier about do you see every tiny little detail, or does it all blend together into a cohesive whole? I find that when something is 4K or something and I can see every pore on the actor's face, that takes me out, because in real life, I mean, I wear glasses. I don't have perfect vision. I don't see the pore on everyone's faces that I'm looking at.
Mhm.
I prefer the how do you say it? The sort of melange of everything coming together rather than everything being starkly precise and different.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. It's the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you mentioned how independent films are less likely to be shown on the big screen. Tell me a bit about the distribution of Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes. You sent me a screener of it, which I very much appreciate. Thank you. Um, how about it's been in a bunch of festivals? Tell me a bit about that process. Is it getting a theatrical release? Will it be on streaming anywhere?
Mhm. Oh yeah, so we kind of finished it up in 2021, and then it kind of started our festival tour, which was quite exciting because I didn't, besides myself and some of the crew, no one had seen it, so it was interesting to see it get feedback, and it quite quickly it got accepted to Fright Fest in London, which was really cool, and then Popcorn Frights at the same time, and then I don't know, it seemed to be doing quite well on the festival circuit. I think it played at 36 festivals. So quite quickly after the first screenings, we got contacted by various sales agents and world sales agencies. So we kind of were lucky enough that we were able to pick between around 8 or 9 sales companies that were interested. So we met with them online, and they kind of explained their terms and conditions. And yeah, we ended up going with Dark Sky Films, which because I've just been a fan of Dark Sky Films for I don't know since I don't know when, The House of the Devil and We Are Still Here, and they had a lot of films that I quite liked. So that was kind of yeah, my preferred choice. But it was between that and a different company that I actually really wanted to go with, which was Mutiny Films from Jonathan Barkin, who used to work for Dread Central. And they now actually distributed Skinnamarink, so that was a big success. So I'm quite happy for them. So it was kind of between these two that I really wanted to go with. And yeah, and they sold it. Dark Sky or MPI is kind of the Dark Sky is just the genre label, but MPI is the big world sales agency. And they ended up selling it to, I think, 10 or 12 territories. So it got a limited theatrical release in the States, and it got released. It's also on Shudder now in the States and the UK. And in
Oh,
Germany, it got,
I
yeah.
could have just watched it on Shudder then.
Oh, yeah, of course. You could have also watched it there. And in the UK, it's getting a quite nice physical release. In Germany, it got a media book release, physical release, and a normal DVD Blu-ray release. So yeah, and I think I'm just now kind of seeing like how it's coming out in different countries, and sometimes it's playing at festivals I didn't even know about because the distributors sent it off to them. And so there's like a Scandinavian distributor, a Turkish one, and South Korean one. So yeah, it's slowly appearing.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking at it on Shudder now. It's Shudder has user reviews and it's very divisive. Um, I
I can imagine. Yeah, I try not to
yeah,
read the user reviews.
I I do want to read you briefly two very short reviews of it: a 5 skull one and a 1 skull one. The 5 skull one saying, "If you love the Love Witch, you'll love this cozy little masterpiece." And then the 1 star review says, "Feminazi tripe, no thanks." Which I find that although reading reviews of your own work can be very stressful, uh, finding very stupid one-star reviews of your work can, at least for me, can be enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Letterboxd is littered full of reviews, and it's sometimes quite fun to read them.
You got a really sort of traditional release distribution structure there with getting different distribution companies doing different parts of the world and things like that. And yeah, you are not the first person I've talked to who's worked with MPI. They seem to be doing a good job distributing independent films like that. So that's really good. I'm curious, obviously going for the traditional distribution seems like it's worked out well for you in that regard. What was it that made you decide to go for a traditional distribution model as opposed to trying to self-distribute it or go purely digital online, that sort of thing?
That's a good question. I mean, with Haga, the movie we did before, we kind of self-released it, and it's kind of the same that we just submitted it to the different, Vudu and Amazon Prime, and it's kind of available to watch on their platform. But I kind of felt with this type of film, it's good to. I didn't want to write out hundreds of emails to press and stuff like that. I kind of swore myself for this film I wasn't going to do that. And I think it was just more comfortable, all these contract negotiations and things like that. I mean, we had to do it with MPI, but we only had to do it once and not with every territory. So I think, yeah, I was kind of just hoping that they would be able to get the film more out there than if I would do it myself. And yeah, I was just kind of tired of handling everything myself. So I was just kind of happy to give it to someone else and let them to do the work.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad that it worked out for you. So, or rather, it's definitely worked out for you in terms of like getting it around the world, getting eyeballs on it, which artistically is one of the most important things. How has it worked out financially? Like, have you been I know that other people I've spoken with who've gotten similar distribution deals have gone with it because it's the thing that would get the most people watching the movie, even if financially it hasn't been especially remunerative.
Mhm.
Has it worked out for you financially, this distribution deal?
Not in the sense that I recouped everything I invested, but I think it was quite similar to what you said, that I kind of made the decision early on that I'm more interested in a lot of people seeing it and kind of it helping me get my second film made that I don't have to self-finance.
Ah,
Yeah, I wasn't really, because if I would do a film for money, I wouldn't do a film like that. That kind of alienates half the audience already with its twist, and it's quite niche. So it was just more the idea of yeah, just having people see it and enjoy it, and if they pirate it, yeah, at least they watch it. So kind of happy about that. And yeah, but for the next film, it's of course different, even since even the plot, because it's a film with such a high budget, I can't make a film that's quite as experimental and quite as perhaps alienating to an audience. So it's a bit different in a sense. It's still, of course, a horror film that's very focused on visuals and has a multi-layered story, but it's I would say a lot more accessible.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So talking about visuals, another aspect that another film that was referenced in Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes is Society.
Mhm.
We talked about that briefly in emails before the conversation here began, and that was not one of the movies that you mentioned earlier when I was asking you about visual um, references. So I'm curious, uh, are there more movies like that where you made a deliberate homage to a specific
Mhm.
scene, um, or anything like that in the film to
Mhm.
keep an eye out for?
Oh yeah, of course. There's of course like smaller moments from the film, and with Society, it was fun because I really I love Society, the movie, of course, and this scene kind of this orgy scene that goes wrong. I was really interested in doing it in that sense, and I talked to a special effects friend of mine, and kind of he was also a fan of the film. So and he kind of gave me a calculation that it would cost 10,000 euros to kind of make these effects. And I said, okay, no, I don't have the money for that. So we just kind of did it our way, and I didn't really think about the fact that people would still recognize it as society. I just wanted to have some kind of gross body horror moments. And then at the Fright Fest, which was the world premiere, that was like one of the questions was also how much the shunting kind of was involved in the film. And then I was kind of happy that people did recognize the society nod in that. As far as for other nods, I mean, there's this moment in The Iron Rose, which I mentioned, this iconic scene where the protagonist, she has the skull and she holds it in front of her face. So that's kind of a nod to that. And there's another nod to the bitter tears of Petra von Kant, because the first lines that are spoken in the film are also lines that are spoken in my film. So that's just a few like subtle nods.
The bitter tears of what? Could you say that again, please?
Of Petra von Kant. It's also a Fassbinder movie.
Okay.
And basically, it's when the movie starts, you see her lying in bed, and someone draws the curtains, and the light shines on her face, and she says, like, Marlene, be sensitive, please. And that's kind of what Dieter's character says in the next morning when he wakes up in the castle. But I think that's the only like direct homages we made. The others are just kind of more in, a mixture of the atmosphere and styles of these movies that I quite like.
Cool. Yeah. One thing that I asked you about a bit earlier about German films, I'm slightly disappointed, but also slightly heartened by your answer from a while ago, because every now and then I'll realize that there's a big gap in my film knowledge where, like, oh, I've never seen, like, about a year ago I realized, like, oh, I've never watched a giallo film, and then I watched a whole bunch of giallo films and really enjoyed that. And so I was kind of hoping that you were going to say, oh, there's all these, great German horror films from the 70s that I've never seen that I would then go get to watch. But in fact, you were like, oh, early German horror, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and M and all of those. And then there's the disgusting 80s ones like Necromantic. And I have seen both of those categories of film.
Okay. I mean, there's some in between. There's one called Laurin from Robert Ziegler, which is from 81, I think. Laurin, which is kind of probably what you would be looking for, which is Eurogothic.
Okay.
Kind of in the stance. And another one is called Tenderness of the Wolves, which is Uli Lermel directed it with Kurt Raab, which is also kind of an atmospheric, disturbing horror film. Then you have Angst, which you might have seen, which is Austrian, though. I'm actually from Austria, so this one I quite like. It's kind of few and far in between. You have Masks, which is also from Andreas Marschall, which is a German giallo take on the giallo film, but it's like a neo giallo. But yeah, from the 70s, 80s, I think, I can't really think of any other ones.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Thank you. I've been writing down a little list of movies for me to check out. So definitely going to be looking into those. The Iron Rose is top of the list that I'm most interested in. So thank you for that. I love discovering new things. Or new to me, I mean.
It's the same for me. There's all these films that I kind of need to. Before the interview, I was watching Waxwork, which I've never seen before. I don't know if you know this 80s movie. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I've always stumbled upon this film. I've never watched it actually, and
yeah, actually, cool. I bought a zine recently, How Horror Movies Made Me a Better Feminist by Chris Rose, and it's a series of short essays about different horror films, and the only one on there that I had not seen before getting the book was Waxwork. And so I just watched Waxwork for the first time about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, wow, that's a nice coincidence. I'm not quite finished yet. I'm around, I think I have like half an hour left to go. So I'll continue watching that. But I like it a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's another one of those sort of meta films where it's very much about the films that came before it.
Mm.
For anyone listening who has not seen Waxwork, it takes place largely in a wax museum that contains exhibits that are about specific earlier horror films, or horror characters that predate film, like Dracula and such.
And because I remember, because we're probably the same age, so you also might have grown up with not Tales from the Crypt, but Tales from the Crypt Keeper, the cartoon series that came out at the time, and they had the one episode which was kind of probably based on Waxwork because it's the exact same plot.
I there's a good chance that I did grow up at that time, but my parents were somewhat strict about what television I was allowed to watch, so
Okay.
I was almost exclusively educational things, and so I missed out on a lot of those cultural touchstones as a child. So I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about how independent filmmaking works in Europe. If you're aware of the differences between how it works in Europe and how it works in America, because I think the thing that I've heard the most is one of the biggest significant differences is that in Europe there's much more government grants and government encouragement of filmmaking, whereas in America, to the degree that that exists, it's sort of monopolized by the really huge industry players. So I'm really curious to hear about your experience and about the sort of the independent cinema in general on your side of the ocean.
Mm-hmm. I mostly know how it works in Germany because it's kind of different for every country, but in general, it's the way, as you said, that the government has a certain amount of money that they spend on culture and films, and it's distributed differently in different countries. And I think in Germany, it's a lot of people are frustrated, a lot of filmmakers in the way it's distributed. I used to go to these meetings about all the German genre filmmakers that are kind of coming up. And I had to stop going because it was also depressing because everyone was just like saying like, yeah, everything sucks and you
Oh
can't
no.
make independent films and because you don't really get the funding because there's a
Uh,
lot of different reasons. One is that in order to get funding in Germany, you need to have a TV station involved. And they basically have the streaming rights for it for Germany or for German speaking countries.
oh,
And
that's
the
really interesting.
and the problem is then, of course, those TV stations they are interested because they are paid from the public. So they're interested in making films that are accessible for the whole of the public. So
Uh,
they're not really interested in art house horror films and things like that, or horror in general. It's genre films. It's quite difficult. And yeah, so that's one of the reasons. The other is that you can't apply for independent films unless you already have 50% of the money, and it has to be a certain big amount. So if I would apply for 500,000 for a movie, they would say that's not enough. If you apply for a $1 million movie and you already have 500,000, then it's easier to get the rest. But the other way around, if it's under 500,000 euros, they won't really be bothered in financing it because it's too small for them. So that also kind of leads to that they only bank movies that it's probably the same in the States that don't offer much of a risk. So it's like romantic comedies involving the same actors, same actresses. And so you're kind of stuck in this weird cycle that only these kind of almost Hollywood-esque German movies get produced, but independent films is a lot more difficult. I think the only reason to make, or the only way to get independent films done is if you actually study film. And so for your final film, you sometimes get a budget of around 100,000 euros. But in my case, I studied fine art. I didn't study film, so I was not given that opportunity. So I think that's the second option is to self-finance them, which is what I did. So um, it's a bit difficult. I think now that this film released and it's got good reviews and good festival run, I think that definitely helped that we already got development funding for the next film for the script. So I'm kind of hoping that now, once I've kind of set foot into this machinery of funding, that it might get easier to do it. But it's probably hard to kind of find your way inside. because it's always the same directors, same people getting the funding usually.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. It's kind of funny hearing that um German independent directors sitting around complaining that they're in a situation that almost all American independent directors are in. Uh, there
Yeah,
there
that's true.
is there is some amount of matching funding like that in America, but it varies based on what state you're in. And like here, I live in Colorado, and here it's 20% of the budget will be matched, but of course you have to do all your hiring and everything inside of Colorado. Um, but it was interesting to me to hear that the threshold is higher there, that the amount of money that you need to have raised before the government will do any matching is higher in Germany. Here in Colorado, it's only $100,000.
Hmm.
Um, so that's different than I expected.
But yeah, don't quote me on that. It might have changed, but I think it's not necessarily the money you have to have, but then the amount of your full budget. If it's not over a certain budget, they are probably not as interested in funding it because then the chances are less likely that it will make back the money. I'm not sure exactly on
Yeah.
how it all works. But how do you do it in your case, for instance, with your independent films?
Well, so everything I've done has been so for starters, I'm quite new at this. I've only made two short films so far, and both of them were zero budget, uh, take care of everything myself. Um, and and yeah, when I say zero budget, I mean like I used my cell phone to record the video, and I think the biggest actual expense was buying pizza for the actors on the day of the shooting. Uh, the location was donated. None of the people involved got paid. The movie have not made any money and are not going to make any money. um, uh, Biggest post-production expense was $35 on film festival submissions, things like that.
Okay.
So I'm building towards being able to make like a feature film, but I'm not close yet.
Mhm.
Maybe in a year. We'll see.
Mhm. Cool.
So the last question that I always like to ask everyone is, where do you see the future of independent films going? You've produced things in what seems like a much more traditional environment than most of the people that I talk to, with getting government funding and then distributing it through a traditional film distributor, getting theatrical releases, getting different contracts for different parts of the world. So that's all almost old-fashioned at this point. And I'm curious where you see things going for independent film in general in the future.
Um, I mean, I'm kind of unsure about the medium film in the future because I feel like I'm already in a generation of filmmakers that doesn't know if film as this medium will exist by the time
Oh,
I'm 80 or stuff like that. But independent films. Oh,
well,
sorry,
so,
what
sorry.
you?
Let me interrupt you really quickly. So sorry, I was saying film, but I don't necessarily mean like literally film stock.
No, I mean film as a medium also
Oh, okay, okay.
because it might get like theater. Like what happened with theater, that it's like an art form, but it's mostly people will go to the theaters just to support the arts. But for independent, I hope not. But in terms of independent film, I think one thing that's becoming more and more apparent is that right now you can only make a high concept film if you have the necessary budget for it. And I'm guessing that it would be a lot cheaper to make good looking visual effects that
Mm,
even as an independent filmmaker, you can make films that look the way, maybe not quite, but the way we see but blockbusters now. That could change in the next 20 years. That like having big effects and CGI spectacle isn't something that people are kind of jaded by, because even low budget filmmakers are able to produce it, so the story becomes a lot more important and relevant.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that the focus is on story going forward because, yeah, I agree. I feel like visual effects peaked a while ago, and then in mainstream blockbusters, it seems as though the executives think, oh, everything has to have, this big visual effects extravaganza, but also we don't really want to give the visual effects artists a lot of time or money to do that, and so things have
Mm.
been becoming more rushed and sort of sloppy.
Mm. Yeah, and
Which
also with I think in 10 years, probably most productions probably will be done in virtual studios, like virtual productions, which actually they actually look quite good, I have to say. As you saw, it's because it's better than green screen, and
That's true.
and for the actors themselves, they're not. I think it's easier to get into the scene. For the next stream, what we want to do is actually some more. I'm blanking on a word. Projection mapping, so that we kind of already do projection mapping on certain objects in camera, so you can kind of already see it for the more, I would say, ethereal moments in the film. So I kind of,
Okay. I'm
yeah, but hmm?
I'm curious what uh you'll be using that for. Because I didn't
This
I
is
didn't spot any like
oh no,
computer
not for
graphics
this
in.
one, for the next one. For
Right,
Dog,
right.
actually, we did have
I'm saying like that that
yeah,
that
yeah,
would be a noticeable departure from what I just watched, which was very everything looked like it was in camera.
almost everything, yeah, except the castle burning down. That
Oh,
was one CGI moment, which I was kind of um, yeah, not inclined to have because it was featured originally a lot more grandiose, but I kind of like that it's more of a through a line shot. It has like you have like this tick tock, and then it kind of changes into the fire. Yeah, I've also with this new movie, I think because people are kind of so spoiled when it comes to CGI that they don't really take it for granted, and I think it would be much more interesting to just kind of experiment with different technique in-camera techniques that people see it and they're like, okay, maybe it doesn't look 100% realistic, but it's something I've never seen before, or it's something never done in this way before,
yeah.
and that people will kind of be more immersed in it than CGI, which yeah, you just see hundreds, you see it with every film now.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally I'm a very big fan of in-camera effects whenever possible. So I'm hoping uh, that things move away from CGI as being the dominant way of doing effects. Um, but yeah, you are right about those virtual studios, which for anyone not familiar with that term, that's probably most prominently been used recently on The Mandalorian. And what it is it's basically there's a giant curved television screen, extremely high resolution, that serves as the backdrop to the studio lot that you're shooting on. And because of the computer programs that we have nowadays, they can be hooked up to the camera in such a way that when the camera is moved, the perspective on the giant backdrop changes in realistic ways. And so you can give the appearance of being on an imaginary landscape uh, without having to use green screen, which, like as you said, green screen can really be hard to act in because the actors don't see anything that even comes close to resembling what the final product will look like. Um, I'm reminded of the difference between the production of the original Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, where in the original Lord of the Rings film there was computer graphics, but there was also an enormous amount of practical sets and shooting on location and all of these forced perspective shots and everything, where uh, quite a huge amount of it was done in camera, and then on the Hobbit almost all of it was done on green screen. And there's this famous behind the scenes video of Ian McKellen uh, breaking down and crying on the shooting of The Hobbit because this was so different from how acting is supposed to work, where you're interacting with other people in a real space. So yeah, I think it's definitely a step up from that. I really like practical sets and backdrops, matte paintings, things like that when they can be done.
Mhm.
But really the only modern mainstream fantastical film that really still uses any of that I can think of is the Barbie movie, which did not use green screens or anything like that. It just used matte paintings
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
yeah, all of the sets were practically constructed, and all of the backgrounds are real backdrops. And there was no CGI in that regard. There was some CGI, like painting out wires and things like that, but other than that, yeah, all practical real sets in
Okay,
camera.
cool. Nice.
Yeah. So thank you so much for talking with me about films and Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes. I'm looking forward to your next movie. I can't wait to see what you do with a bigger budget.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for the interesting questions and conversation.
Yeah. So Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes is currently available on Shudder in the United States. And did you say Canada?
I think so. And the US, I think it's also on Shudder
Yes.
because we don't have Shudder in Germany, unfortunately.
Ah,
But yeah, otherwise it's available on all the general streaming platforms. And Tubi, it's also available, which
yes.
is what I kind of noticed is becoming more and more popular. Actually, people are enjoying Tubi a lot more
Oh, yeah.
because it has a quite big selection.
Tubi, because I watch such a large portion of independent films, Tubi is the primary way that I watch movies these days. Um,
Mhm.
I watch things that are only on Shudder. I watch them on Shudder. Most things I watch on Tubi, and occasionally I'll go to my local drive-in movie theater to watch new releases.
Mhm.
And it just occurred to me, I guess drive-in movie theaters are pretty much a uniquely American thing, aren't they? You don't have them over there, do you?
I'm not. I mean, it's possible that they had it in the 70s. I'm not sure, but now I don't think there might be some obscure ones somewhere. But yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, not as much of a thing in Germany.
Yeah, something that takes advantage of the fact that America has huge empty expanses of land.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah. So do you have do you have a website, social media, or anything like that you would like to direct people to?
Yeah, if they like, should I send you the link and you would just link it, or should I say it
Yeah,
now?
I can definitely do that and include it in the description of the episode. And also if you want to say it out loud now.
It's kevinkopacka.com is my homepage. And yeah, on Instagram, I'm called For Those Who Still Exist. And on Twitter, it's Kevin Kopacka. So yeah, I'm not on the social media as much, but if anyone has any questions, you can always contact me via these.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm looking at kevinkopacka.com. There's a lot of really beautiful screenshots on here.
I think, yeah, it's a mixture of my paintings and stills from my films.
Okay. I was about to ask on that. Like, did you make an animated film, or it's
No, it's just the paintings because I kind of like the color schemes, how they, or in general, the themes and atmosphere, how it kind of correlates between the medium of film and painting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.